There is, okay, so let's say that I create a floor. And as usual, Illustrator is always on the line as opposed to fill or vice versa. Oops. And I make slats. With my floor. Go a little thicker. And then let's make a little. Pull this forward. Arrange, bring the front. That'll be the light hitting the slat. And we're just going to do our duplicate trick. Option. Shift drag. And then let's say we have some half-assed grain in them. My smooth tool. And let's say that this, I spent some time on this grain, which I'll just say that. Let's say. Let's say that I change all this around and I put grain all over the floor and so on and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't do it that half-assed. Okay, so then if I have this in a room and I want it to be on the floor, let's say, there's this tool right here, which is called, I think it's called the free transform tool. Let me see if the name comes up. I think that's what it's called. Now, here's the weird thing about this tool. It does a couple of things, but I'm going to go. See how it gives me, when I go over the corner, it gives me all those wacky arrows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the trick with this. I have to click and start it. And then once I start to move it, I go Command, Options, Shift, and it will pull it into perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's say,
Command Option Shift, right?
but you have to grab the corner and start to move it, then do Command, Option, Shift. That's totally weird. It's the only tool in Illustrator I know that's weird like that. But let's say that I go.
What's that tool called again?
This is called the free transform tool. It's right there. It's with my Puppet Warp tool. Now, oh, by the way, up here, where is it? Okay, so over here in your tools, sometimes you only get like one set and you're not getting all your tools. If you go up here to toolbars and go advanced, it'll double them and give you most of your tools that way. Okay, so it'll default to most of your tools. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's do this now. Let's lock this. Let's go. I'm going to do this real half-assed, but you guys will get the point. Let's go. Oops. Let's make this a little more. Let's make this a little more bricky red. It's too cool. Let's go to a warm. And I'm gonna grab, I don't want it to be screaming white. I also don't want it to be that color. So let's see if I can go. I'm just gonna use this, flip it. I'm gonna go lighter in value. Let's see how that looks. That's not true. We'll use that. Now, I'm gonna see if I can switch this. I don't know if this will work. I'm gonna go here to my brushes that we talked about, use this one. I don't want it perfect. And now I don't want too much of this. I'm just gonna kind of pop it in here and there. That's good enough. Okay. Does that make sense? Rick?
Yes.
Yes.
So I could also come in here and there and just barely tweak this color. Let's say that. That's close enough. So I'm gonna group this. Just make sure I got everything unlocked. Yeah. Group it. Okay. Is this one group? No. Let's group this one. Oops. Let's group something. Let's put this. And let's go back to free transform. Start to move it and then go Command Option, whatever it is. Let's see if we can do it this way. Make this a little bigger. Actually, let's just make this a little smaller.
Is it Command Option Shift? Or
What?
something?
For the free transform?
Yeah.
Command Option Shift, yes, after you start moving it. Now I'm gonna take this. I'm just gonna flip it.
When you repeated those lines really fast when you created the bricks, how
Mhm.
did you do that so fast? Like, what did you use to do that?
It's that one we talked about last time where it's if I have an object or a line or whatever, oops, you know. If I go Option, which gives me the double arrow, which, by the way, this is in a lot of programs. Option drag will repeat something or will duplicate it. Option, and in this case, I'm holding Shift to constrain it. Oops. And then I just let go. Then I just go Command D. That's it.
Okay, I knew about the option drag, but I did the Command D thing. What is that? What is that short for? Command D?
Duplicate. So there's my whatever you want to call it, correct?
Yes.
So that's based on what we just said about John's coffee shop with that wall. I could build that wall and then put it in perspective because he has that 1 point perspective. So it's pretty simple, right?
That was so crazy.
So it's right there, okay, with your Puppet Warp Tool.
So basically just create an asset from Illustrator and then duplicate that asset and then use that as the wall,
Uh-huh.
right? Okay, got it.
Whatever, floor, wall, whatever. Anything you need to put into perspective in that way.
All right, will do.
It's what was I gonna say? You know, and I could also start to go, well, where's the lighting at? Is it further away here? I want to ungroup this now. I'm going to grab this. And a lot of times, I'm just going to grab that. A lot of times you can go, put this front for now. You can just take the same color, put it over it, go to your transparency, and then go to multiply like we used before. And it'll give you a shadow value.
Oh, okay, got it.
Now, if I go, that's too dark, then I can go back to transparency and go pull back the opacity and dial it in how dark I want it.
Got it.
Make sense?
If you want to do a gradient, you can do that, right? For
Sure.
the
Actually,
transparency.
yeah, you could do this. Look. Let's go all the way back up. Let's go to our gradient. Let's pull the gradient the right way. Now, hang on. Let's say the top is lighter because it's lit from above. Now I could just go 0. I don't even think I need to do that, but I could. And I could put it here. It's on multiply already, and then pull that down, and I'll get that kind of thing.
Okay.
Like if I got light from above, that's a nice, you know, that's nice, right?
All right, okay.
So
Got it.
let's look at some gradient things, because that's what I actually want to go over. So when you have a gradient, you also have this option, or a couple of options here. So let's get rid of. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, so there's our gradient. And you also have this, if I double click this, or if I go to the window here, I have these 3 types right here. So this one right here, so here's the one you're linear, the one you're on. And then you have this radial one, okay? So I can do the same stuff in this one that I do in the other one. You know, I can change the colors and, you know, I could go in here and adjust them. Do all that, okay? But it's just a radial one, okay? I can also go in here. Change it, how, you know, the shape of it and all that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
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 Now, here's another one that's really interesting. If we go, let's just start this one over. And I'm going to go back to my gradient window right here, my tool set. And I'm going to go to this last one, which I don't even know what they call it. Freeform blend, I think they call it. And I'm going to go, there's a point right there. You see it?
Yes.
So let's go. And then I put another point right here. And I can take these, this right here. I can make it bigger, smaller. This right, yeah. That right there will pull it in. And I should be able to. Dial it in bigger or not. But I can do that here actually. So I can pull that out, make it bigger. I can add another one. So I can get these pretty complex gradients just based on where I'm putting these points. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, if you notice right here, it has points and then it has lines. So the lines, if I come in here, then I can pull this as a line and I can assign my gradient to it. So it gives me a lot of ways to sculpt a, let's do it right over. You know, to sculpt a more complex gradient. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So let's look at something here. So, has anybody ever heard of Grisaille, a Grisaille technique?
No.
Okay, so what a Grisaille technique is basically is you create, and this comes from painting, okay? But they use, you know, it's used a lot in just everything. It's when you create a full value under drawing, under painting, whatever, where you have full value grayscale, okay? So if you look at a lot of those old master paintings from a long time ago, they would do a black and white, completely finished black and white underpainting in oil. I mean, really finished. And then they would let that dry, and then they would just glaze color over. And all glaze means is that it's a transparent color. So if I have a big red cape, once I glaze that color over it, it's going to tint everything underneath it, and all of a sudden the whole thing looks like I rendered it out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, it's something I use all the time actually in painting, and I use it all the time in digital painting, all different types of things. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about. So let's go here. Now, this is just something I found online, but it's black and white, as you can see, right?
Yes.
Now, here's another little trick. I don't know if this matters, but I think it's kind of interesting. I could come in here and I could take my pen tool and go, because I want to select this guy. So I just go in here with my pen tool and select, correct?
Yes.
Another thing I can do is I can get the original raster image and I can go, because it's so stark from this to this, I can kind of get away with this. I don't usually ever use the magic wand tool, but in this case I think it'd be fine. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go up here and go inverse. This is just a trick, you don't have to remember this. And then I'm going to go right here to my paths, make work path. That's fine for the tolerance. Made a work path. And then I'm going to go File, Export, Paths to Illustrator, Work Path. Come on. This damn thing, it's in my way all the time. Okay, and what it'll do now is it created this Illustrator thing. Which is my outline of the guide. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so we just, just leveraged Photoshop for that, okay? So now I have this, and let's say that I have my, I've created that shape, correct?
Yes.
So now let's go, turn this on, and I made, using that gradient blend tool, I made this where I just sort of mapped some color on the face. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I just used that freeform tool. And what I did was I went here to my overlay. So let's do this without anything. There it is. Okay, that's what I made. Now, if I go here to my overlays and I go color, it'll tint the drawing, or it'll tint it underneath and give it color. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool technique, okay? And that gradient blend tool, I could go in there and really dial this in. I could come over here on this side. Let's see if it'll let me do it. I'm gonna go back to regular. Let's see if Let's add another point here. Maybe he's getting an edge light, maybe. Go back here, go to color, overlay. Yeah. Get a little more warmth on that side. Make sense?
Yes.
Very simple technique, okay? And you can also try different overlays, by the way. It doesn't have to be like, let's try multiply. Doesn't really work as well. There's color burn. I encourage you to play with these because they do interesting things. Color works really good as an overlay for this type of thing, for Versailles technique. There's overlay that gives it a little different look. Soft lights, just slightly tinted. Too much. Now I could also pull that back by going, I kind of like that. I could pull back the opacity. Get a little of that. That's hard light, difference, too much. Exclusion. You'll see some of them. So I usually just go through them. Well, that's kind of interesting. And there's color again. And let's see what luminosity does. No, luminosity doesn't do anything. Color works the best. Okay. So that's another way that you can get some complex color going on top of a gray value, or not even just gray value. You can do it in different ways. Okay.
Yes.
Now, we talked about yesterday about using photo reference, okay? So I just want to kind of talk about that real quick. So let's go. So I grabbed this photo reference, okay? So now what I would do here is I would start going in here. And I would start taking these shapes. Building these shapes around this, okay? Like this nose thing. I'm doing this real sloppy. Okay, don't do it sloppy. This one, again, I could go and grab my reflect tool. That's weird. Oh, there it goes. It's because these don't have any color, so let's give it some color. Yeah. Oops. You know, and I'd start building all these shapes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to end up with is going to be probably pretty hard edged. But I'm going to end up with a lot of line like that. Make sense?
Yep.
And then I'm going to end up starting kind of here. Okay, now what I got to do here now is I have to figure out this kind of stuff. How am I, okay, am I going to do a real graphic dog? Am I going to do, you know, all that kind of stuff? Okay, how am I going to do it? If I'm going to do fur, then I got to figure out how I want to do that. These ones here that I started, I just did with the width tool. Okay, now I could also come in here, you know, and just build these by hand. Same thing up here. I got to get different values in here. So this is just my starting point. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And
Yes.
another thing I could do, I could take this. Let's go here. Usually a dog's nose is kind of wet, so it's a little reflective. If it's a nice sunny day, I might get some blue in there in that reflection. I absolutely hate it when my palette disappears. Okay, so let's go here. I want to make sure this is just a line. And I'm going to go. I had it. I'm going to go I'm gonna pull in my gouache brushes again. Which I thought I already did.
Are there additional brushes we can add to our brush library in Illustrator?
Endless. We're also gonna talk about making our own. But yes, you can add tons of them. I've got halftone brushes, I've got gouache brushes, I've got all kinds of stuff. So I'm gonna use maybe, go ahead.
If we have them in Photoshop, those don't translate to Illustrator, right? They
No.
have to be specific to Illustrator.
You got it. Let's try this one. Or let's try that one. Using this to make a mask. Take his nostrils, pulling forward.
Mike, what was the hockey that you just used for the
Four.
mask?
Oh,
Uh,
Command 7.
Command 7?
Yeah.
Okay, got
That
you.
works on Mac. I don't know if it works on Windows or not. And then I could take this and I could reduce the transparency on it. It's a little strong. You know, and I could start to build texture. Both of these, I could probably just repeat this. Move his teeth back over this way, further over on the top teeth. And then I'd have to figure out how I'm going to handle, like, now it depends. Again, if we look here, let's go. You probably get a bunch of different types of. Oops. You can see some of these are really graphic. And if you went through them, you'll find some that are, you know, a little more furry. This is kind of nice the way they handled that. And then here, he just used a shadow value to break the fur right there. Does that make sense? This one, kind of a nice interpretation, wherever it went. That's good. Oh, there it is. Okay, that's a different type of interpretation. And then, you know, it just depends on how you want to handle it. Make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
And like here, we could do what that guy did. Probably go. Again, I'm gonna do this real half-out. I'm gonna grab all of this. And this, send it all to the back. And then this guy. Should go the other way though. That should be, this should be the darker. And this should be the lighter. It's too light. I'd go a little darker. You know, that's another way I could break up the fur. I could do it up here the same way. I'd have to break up these edges if I don't want it to be too graphic looking and so on and so forth. I don't like this way the color changes right there. It looks better unified. Looks like he's got a beard right now, so I'd have to fix that. This down here, he's got little chin whiskers down here, so I'd probably lighten that up. I could probably even get away with. Let's try this. I don't need to. Let's do that. You know, and I could give them like a little graphic break right there, so it doesn't look so hard edge. So on and so forth, right? Oh, here's another thing. Like I could also find a brush that would, it's in my stock brushes, like, let's see if I can find one. Let's go here. Like this one. Let's go to my brush. Let's make this small. And I can use the brush to create the edge texture. I just have to find a brush that makes sense. Does that make sense?
So basically using the brush as like a type of fur detail, right?
Yeah, just to break up that edge so it doesn't feel so hard edged.
All right, we'll do.
Now, again, that depends if you want to do a very graphic version like those ones we were just looking at. I'd also, you know, I'd vary this just like it's varied right here. This would probably go lighter on top. Now that I might do with a gradient. I don't know. I'd have to play with that. Dogs usually get this little, and what I'm doing is I'm trying to find enough shapes to make this interesting. You know, that's kind of how I look at it. I don't really look at it as really anything but that. I'm just trying to make these, get enough shapes in there where it's interesting, whether it's a graphic solution or whatever. I'll group this. Oops. Yeah. You know, just start building. Right?
Yes.
Now, you could do that with humans. You can do that with anything. Okay. And let's see if I can get away with not affecting this. If I do that, I'll have to change it. Let's go. Fact. Oh, I'm sorry. Window, image trace. Now here's the trick with this. You have to click this little advanced thing and go ignore white. And then I'm going to go preview. And then I can dial this in. So where I see this used a lot is when you see those black and white high contrast t-shirts and things like that. Because it's instantaneous. Now, I can also, let's put it all the way down. Nothing, all the way up. Too much. So you just go in and you just dial in however much you want, okay? And you go, here's how I do it. You go object, expand. It'll say object fill, that's fine. And now it's a vector graphic. So if you notice, the ignore white meant there is no white in it, which you want because you want to be able to see through it. Does that make sense?
What was the, can you show the process again to make it into a vector again? Object.
I'll show you. Let's get rid of this one, start over. Then I'm on an image trace. I'm gonna select this. I dropped my advanced because I want to go ignore white. And I'm gonna show you one other thing with this in a minute. I'm on black and white, and then I'm just gonna hit preview. Hit okay. And then I just dial it in. You know, how much information do I want? You got a couple of different ways of doing that here. A bit of a noise. And then once I'm done with that, I just go up here to object, expand. And what that means is it's gonna take that raster image and expand it into, you know, it'll turn it into a vector. So I hit expand,
Got it.
it hits object fill, and I hit okay. And then now I've got a vector object.
And we don't click stroke, right? What's the difference between a fill and a stroke then?
Well, stroke is literally a line, and a fill is filling a shape.
Oh, okay. Got it.
But I can also go here and let's see if we can find, let's do this. Let's go here. And go window, image trace, advanced, ignore white. Oops. Ignore white. And preview. Now I'm going to take it out of this and go to color. And again, I can dial this in. How much do I want? Now, the more paths you put in, the more memory hoggish it'll get. Let's go through. And by the way, this is a low res image, so it works better with a high res. Let's try this one. And I can also go grayscale. Make sense? Now I could create this image, use the image again, and do a blend over it and create my own color for it also, just like we just did with the guy's portrait. So I'm gonna go back to color. And then go object, expand. And there, now if I go to Command Y, there's what we actually have. Make sense?
Wow, yes.
Now, if I had something really realistic in the background, maybe I might take this, or I might even just use it as a, I wouldn't do it in color for this type of thing. But, you know, I might go, I've got a stand of trees back here. You know, and I would do things to try and change them up so they don't look exactly the same. Or maybe I'd do 2 or 3 different trees. Or I might just use them as silhouette. Let's see if I can fill them as just silhouette. Might use them as a background. You know, if they're way in the background, they're just silhouettes. You know, if I had, you know, some hills back here, and this is way in the background, that could work. so on and so forth.